When you look at it, basically what it's saying is that men of all ages like young women, and then women like men to be a little bit older, but not, pretty much they don't like too young for men.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Emily and Todd Podcast. Today we're talking about how age impacts desirability in the dating market. Before we get started, please remember to like and comment under this video, guys, as it does really help with the YouTube algorithm. So, Todd, we're talking about a specific chart right now that's floating around social media that's talking about the desirability based on age in women versus men. And surprise, surprise, there's quite a difference.
Yes.
In the shape of the graph. We're going to have it on screen so that our viewers kind of can follow along and see what we're talking about.
Yes.
But what is the biggest thing that stands out to you?
It's honestly not super surprising to me, and just my worldview and the way that I think about things, that how the chart is laid out is that from the desirability rank in age for men to women, it's going to be highest when women are young. And when women are desiring men, the trend is to getting older. And so that's something that is pretty controversial.
It is. This is something I don't think a lot of people like to hear, because when you look at it, basically what it's saying is that men of all ages like young women, and then women like men to be a little bit older, but not, pretty much they don't like too young for men.
Yes.
But then anything like above 30 seems to be pretty high, and it levels off.
Yeah, well, I think there's a reason for that. And the reason is that I think women mature quicker than men. I mean, that's been widely studied. So that's one of the reasons. And women want security. And with security comes a certain amount of financial investment, and also, to be stable emotionally, and to have a career that is pretty settled, where the vast majority of younger guys, although they may have a lot of potential, they are not in that space yet. And so where men, on the other hand, we really don't care too much about a woman's money or career.
You don't care, yeah. You don't care if we're a doctor or a
no, I mean, if you really connect with somebody, great, but it's not the primary focus. The primary focus is going to be, are we attracted to that person, and do we get along with that person? Are we connecting with them? And so, but I think if you look at all the different checklists that are out there, women have this big checklist. And how many guys in their early 20s are going to be able to check those boxes?
Very, very few. I mean, unless they're coming from family money, essentially, and they already have that kind of financial backing to them.
Yes.
That's really the only case I see.
Well, either that or they're professional athletes, or,
right.
Musicians or actors or whatever. But even then, it's one of those things where I think a woman would want the guy to have some kind of intellect and career, because there's one thing to inherit money. It's another thing to build your wealth.
Oh, I agree. There is a difference there. And I've heard of a lot of women speaking to that, because it does demonstrate something within that man, including his ability to work hard. And he has to be, of some level of intelligence just to, go from nothing to something.
Yes.
Or maybe something like middle class to above, just to even go up one kind of notch, I would say, in society is a big deal, and it shows a lot about somebody.
Now, one of the things, there's this kind of big discussion in the manosphere about, kind of not what makes up SMV, but of the individual components, how important they are.
Mm-hmm.
So, traditionally that's looks, status, money, game, pre-selection, social proof, those type of things. They all kind of make up SMV. And what the differing pills kind of believe is that one is more than others. So, for example, the red pill, which is very wide, but I would say their consensus is the fact that it's more about kind of being that provider and having, kind of game and things like that, where the black pill is really all about looks.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think what makes sense is that it's a combination of all three. And I think it also depends on where you're meeting these people. Because I think if it's on dating apps, the only thing you really have to go on is looks potentially.
Right. Yeah, because this study, we should probably note, was done in 2014.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that's sort of before all of, the huge craze in dating apps.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am wondering, like, how much would be skewed on this.
Mm-hmm.
So if we've said this before, that dating apps makes looks more important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people in the black pill community would agree with that.
Of course, yeah.
And so with that being the case, and with women having way more options and being able to sort of really select some of those good-looking men on the dating sites, that potentially, do you think that more women today would be going for the looks over the status and money? Or do you think
and the reason that is because most people, the majority, are meeting on dating apps.
Mm-hmm.
And with dating apps, especially the big ones, I would say the best one probably right now is Hinge, because there's much more to it than just swiping left and right and a photograph and a really brief bio. But I think what's happening is that that's the case, is that those looks have been inflated because of the fact that these guys who are at the top have all of these choices, and then they can, hook up with these women. They can go out with them and things like that, but they're not giving them relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And so women get deluded into thinking that they can have a relationship with these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is that most of them can't. And so I think, and this is kind of interesting, because in 2014, was Instagram even around? Or is it just that, I think I started 2015 maybe? But it was around.
It was.
Okay. But it was early stages. It had
early
to be.
stages. Yep.
Yeah.
Facebook was definitely established.
Yeah, but Facebook is for boomers. And so, like no Gen Zers are on Facebook,
no.
And so,
Yeah.
but OnlyFans wasn't around.
No.
And websites like Seeking Arrangements wasn't around.
Mm-hmm.
Women have so much ability, especially when they're at their highest SMV, which is in their early 20s, to make their own money. So if they can make their own money, why wouldn't they just try to date the Chad versus meeting an older man that is more established if money isn't really on the top of their concerns?
Right. And I do agree somewhat that it is becoming less important for women to have a man be like very established in his career and already making a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense because there's, like we've talked about before, there's more women in colleges right now getting educations.
That's the thing I wanted to step back on for a second, is to say, I just kind of made it sound like really sleazy, but it's much more than Instagram and OnlyFans. It's like you said, the women are more in school at this point and are making more money between age 20 and 30 than men. And it's not just because of them using sexuality or whatever.
No.
It's because of the fact that they have careers
and
as well.
And it's not only that, like, they know that they're going to be able to contribute to the partnership of the guy that, you know, she picks if she's going to college. It's literally like having that control of finances. Like, she could even know that maybe she's only going to make $30K a year or let's say $50K a year after college. You know, maybe she's coming out and she's a teacher. But even if that's not going to give her the lifestyle that she may desire by matching up with somebody else that maybe earns more than her, because that would be ideal for her, I'd say, she still has like that cushion.
Yeah.
So she can push it.
At the same time, if they're in a decent position and they're really looking for a relationship, why wouldn't they go for the most attractive guy that they can get if money isn't the first factor that they need in their life?
Okay, I think this is where it's difficult to separate out and make one thing more important than the other. And I know I'm going to sound like a total like girl, because this is what girls always say, is that it's not, you know, it's not just about that. It's about this list of 10 other things.
Yes.
But it is a bit of like a balance and combination of, you know, as long as she feels attracted to that man, but then also he has some of those key things like status and money, and he has demonstrated that he's a hard worker. Like, he could be a little less attractive than this 20-year-old in her class, but she might go for that guy because of that status. But it's not that she's not attracted to him. She still needs that. Like, he could be 33, but she, like, as long as she's still attracted to him, then it heightens some of those other things, like in him overall, compared to the 20-year-old that might be like drop dead gorgeous, but, you know, is not at where the 33-year-old is in life.
Well, so women only swipe on like 5%, not even.
Yeah.
And so it's something where the argument, again, that I would make is the fact that the average guy who is on there, who's probably in his early 20s, who's going to get that swipe right, is probably going to be that top tier looking man. And compared to the person who is 33, I just don't think the 33-year-old guy in this dating age is going to get that opportunity.
I think that it is still more difficult for him on dating apps, for sure.
On dating apps, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think in the real world, if people were able to meet in some kind of a warm environment, potentially even through like a DM on Instagram, if this guy was a young doctor, just got out of medical school, you know, that type of thing, I think that there would potentially be a chance there, if especially it was kind of a normie looking woman and who, you know, wasn't a super achiever, but was in the, you know, the career field and, you know, was making average money. But I think that it's going to be much more difficult than it was in the past.
Yes, I do agree with that.
Because I can look back at some of my own experiences and I would have to say that my SMV was probably highest around 35, and it's kind of slowly gone down.
Because now, like, because 35, you had already reached like the peak of your, like, you had obtained your career.
Yeah, so I look at myself at 35 versus 25, and so at 35, I was well established in my career, and I was making a good income. I owned a house, where when I was 25 even, don't even forget about college, I was in graduate school and I was living with my parents and I was broke.
That's never a good look.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want to pay more to live on campus. So, but I guess what I'm saying is that back then it was something, and I know times have definitely changed, but I could be in my early to mid 30s And I was dating a lot of women who were in their early 20s at that point.
Yes.
But I think if I was trying for that in this day and age, and even, take me back 20 years, I think that it would be still really difficult for me to get through the door because I wouldn't consider myself in that, kind of top 20%. And so, but I'm wondering about for you, what do you think kind of makes up that top 20%? Because I'm wondering, because it's obviously like the looks piece is gigantic on dating apps. But let's say the guy is a little bit older and he has great pics and he has medical doctor, physician under there.
Right.
Is that could he potentially be included in that top 20%? Because my argument was that if you take care of yourself, there's not going to be a huge disparity in the way that you look between 25 and 35.
I agree with that. Especially for men.
Yes, exactly. And so that's where I think the difference might be, is that maybe there's some guys who have been able to kind of maintain their looks and have good photographs but also have that status. And with status, money is implied. So he may potentially be in that top 20%. That's something that, but I think that before it was something where when people met more organically and there wasn't really dating apps, it was something where I think this chart ran true because of the fact that women do have this big checklist, and who's going to meet that? Somebody who's going to be older.
Right, which is very true. Now, I do think that there's one issue on dating apps with even a woman that young being able to see a man in his 30s, and that's the age filter. She might just be setting it so that she's not even seeing the 30-some-year-old.
I don't know, though. I'm wondering how many women do that, though. Do you know what I mean? Just because of the fact that they want to get as many options as possible. And maybe there's some guy that is in his 30s that, kind of makes it through.
I think that a woman is only changing that filter if she has kept it within her age and she has not had success. And now she's willing. And now she's
Fair
like,
enough.
well, maybe, these boys stink. I'm going to try for the older man.
Well, I would say that, I don't know, think back to your 20. I mean, you're kind of an unusual case because you got married so young. But if you didn't choose that route in life, what do you think would be more appealing to you? Somebody who is 10 years older but really established versus somebody who is your age who has just had potential? And I know that you're so conservative, and
you know what I'm going to say.
Exactly. You're not the right person probably to ask this question, but you are the resident woman.
I think I'm atypical with this, but I do fit into a little bit of a category, I think, for kind of a growing group of women. And that's, women that have gone to college and see that they are going to be working in some sort of career path. Yeah. So that was me in my 20s. So honestly, finding a man so that I could stay home and have babies, like that wasn't as important to me.
Yeah.
And it was more so I want to find somebody around my age and I want to grow with them.
Yes. But I think that you are atypical in that as far as your career aspirations and the amount of work that you put in and just, kind of who you are as a person. And so, that's why I've always called you, you're this like combination of the modern woman and the traditional woman, a hybrid, where most women, I would say, don't fit into both those camps.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. I think though that it's growing. I do.
You think so? I think it's declining.
I think it depends on where you're looking, because I think if you were looking at like universities where women are attending, like I think that they would be the ones that are similar to me. I think that if you're looking online, and you're looking at the examples that we've seen on TikTok that are just women that are not necessarily thinking they're going to be in this big time career down the road, and they would rather just like look good and find a man that has like the list of 10 things that she wants, including that financial stability, so that, you know, she can have a pretty easy life. Like, I do think that that's out there for sure. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot of, which makes us think that that's like what a lot of women want.
But do they want that long term though, versus something that can help pay for their, you know, their student loans or help them get their first apartment or car or whatever? Because, you know, the reality is that when everybody graduates from college, we all start at the bottom and you have to work your way up. So it takes time to get to that place. So, you know, it begs the question is if you are a successful woman, which is happening more and more often, why would you need to date that guy who's older when you can date someone and you're not as concerned about the money that he brings in, especially if it ends up, you know, being even or close to being even. I think guys who would be on that, you know, kind of top tier as far as looks for the dating apps, I think what potentially could end up happening is that this is something where women may only see him, especially modern day women, as something fun and a hookup because of the fact that they have the mindset that it's okay to do that. Or maybe I just watch too much Manosphere stuff. Do you know what I mean?
I don't know. I think there is potential there, you know, for that being the case.
Let's say you're this kind of normie woman and you have the opportunity to hook up with this Chad guy. That's going to bring you a lot of validation.
Yes.
As far as, you know, saying, wow, like I can, you know, get with this guy. And it's something that I think for women, especially with sexual empowerment or perceived sexual empowerment, it's something that they're going to say, you know what, I'm going to be the one who's going to get this guy and going to keep him. But the reality is that most of the time that's not going to happen. I mean, the studies have shown that what happens is that if guys connect, if they're in that top 5-10%, they are going to connect with the 5 or 10% women as far as relationships.
For relationships, yeah.
But anything below that, they'll have sex with. Well, not anything, but like a mid-tier woman. But they're definitely not giving a relationship to.
So based on that and looking at the graph, it's almost more likely, like if you're a guy in your 20s, that maybe you'll have sexual relations with an older woman, like in her 30s, potentially.
Well, that's that whole cougar thing, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of guys in their 20s may be going that route because of the fact that that's their only option and they'd rather get that. But I think that a lot of the guys who would be in that age category are not looking for relationships with these women either.
But I feel like some fall into it. Like I see that happening with, I don't want to pull single moms into it, but I feel like that's typical once you're looking at women in their 30s.
Yeah.
They've probably had some form of relationship which has resulted in a child. And now if they're in the dating world, they're separated. So they're a single mom.
Yeah.
But
what 22-year-old guy is going to want to date a single mom when he can barely wipe his own ass? I mean,
I know that. But well, if she is, you know, really taking care of the child and he just gets the added benefit of like literally just being with her.
I've never seen a relationship though between an age gap where the guy is significantly younger.
Do you think it would just be sexual?
I think it would just be sexual.
If it was happening.
If it was happening. I don't think the guy would. And again, I just haven't seen this ever. I've seen it, you know, the other way around a million times.
Yeah.
But it's, as far as that's concerned, it's something where I think what ends up happening is, so when a guy is 20, so I'll even look at myself. Like when I was 19. So my first serious girlfriend was with a 16-year-old. And so it was something that was, you know, that 3-year difference now means nothing, but back then was huge.
Oh my God, you're right. Like thinking back to high school.
Yeah. So she was a junior in high school and I was like sophomore in college.
Yeah, and if you were like high up in your own status as a girl in high school, like you would not date younger.
Yeah.
You would be looked at like, ooh.
Oh yeah.
Like, why are you doing that?
Absolutely. And if you can bag a college guy back then, if you were in high school, that's something that. So it was one of those things where there was always kind of this difference in age. It wasn't significant. It wasn't like gigantic, but it was, 3 to 4 years. And then my first really long-term relationship, I met her when I was a senior in college and she was a freshman. And we continued like 4 years after that. But there was still that difference. And I think it was something where she saw me as, okay, he's going to be done with graduation and then he's going to go on to grad school. So he's got all this potential where she was just starting out in life. Men have been in women's lives for protection and provision. And so that's something that I think is kind of hardwired in us. And so that has to be something that I would think still has some value, even if women are doing well in the workplace.
I agree. And I think most women would agree with that because that's how they see a man that is like masculine is somebody that is still sort of above her in status. And I think she's seeking that no matter what. Like the cushion is nice, if she has her own career and she's able to support herself, if crap hit the fan, she would be okay. But she's going to still seek that guy that is like above her.
Yeah.
Because it's attractive to her.
Well, that's hypergamy, right?
Right.
And so if she has this checklist and she only dates up, how is she going to connect with a guy who's less mature than her, probably broke, or just starting out in his career? How is that hypergamy working?
Well, that's the interesting part because I've thought more about this hypergamy, and I think that when Black pillars are talking about it, of course, like they're just talking about looks, but it is not that simple for women. I think that they are looking at all aspects, and maturity is a huge part of that. So I don't know.
For relationships.
For relationships. Maybe men they're probably pretty standard. It's not like a man can force themselves to become more mature unless they've just had that in their life early on in age where they were kind of forced, I guess, because of their living conditions. So in some ways, like for a man to be more emotionally mature, even if he's had like longer relationships and he has a track record of demonstrating that like that's what he wants and that's what he's been able to maintain in the past. I think that's attractive. I think, of course, him being hardworking, him having some sort of status.
Yeah, but that's so hard to tell on a dating app.
I know. That's why dating apps, I do agree when black pillars say that it's more about looks on dating apps. Because, of course, that is the first thing that is seen on a dating app.
Exactly. And so how are you able to even determine those things until you get to know a person a little bit? And, except for the bio. But if the guy doesn't meet her looks standards, she's not going to look at the bio.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't think so. If she has a lot of options, unless she feels like she needs to change some of her own behaviors because she's not picking well. I think that's the other thing that might make her change what she does. Potentially. But I think that's few and far between because women do just have so many options.
Well, and I think it's something that, again, this is not a fault of women. It's it's the paradigm of choice. And so when you have so many choices, you're logically going to say, okay, of those choices, which of the person I'm most attracted to? And that's just how dating works. And so, but it's something where let's say they filter out all the guys that they're not, and they just keep the ones that they're in. Then it's one of those things where whether they know it or not, they're in dangerous territory because the reality is that if the guy is significantly higher and they do match, then there's a good chance that it's not going to end up in a relationship. And she's just going to get pumped and dumped, as crude as that sounds, and then she's going to be all manner trash.
Do you think it's less likely for that to occur if it's a young woman? So based on this chart, right, she's most desirable at age 20, 21. So let's say she's 20, and then the man is in his 30s, but he's like highly attractive, which we can go into that too, because I think that a lot of times men actually become more physically attractive in their 30s compared to when they're 20 and below. But in that case,
a lot of people would argue with that one, but I think it's an individual thing. But
yeah, like if he, I guess it does depend on how high up he is, because if he has like the looks and the status and that, like just everything, then he probably does have a lot of options. But if it's the guy that's just sort of like, I don't know, makes kind of average, like maybe he makes just above average too, like $70,000-$80,000 a year. He has a good, solid career. He's attractive. If he matches with a 20-some-year-old woman, like I feel like based on that chart that he's going to value that, because maybe he's not getting so many of the 20-some-year-olds.
Maybe. I'm wondering, though, if the same rule wouldn't apply potentially to that guy who's in his early, mid-30s and says, okay, so if I have all the boxes checked, I'm still maintain my looks, but now I have my career going and I have some money and blah, 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 then why would I want to just settle for one woman when I can have a plethora of women?
Oh, damn. That's probably what the 21-year-old is concerned about, the woman. I mean, I think that would be telling there is if that 30-some-year-old has had a track record of like just on again, off again relationships, like, you know, or just hooking up with women, not really having relationships.
If he's kind of this high status guy and he has the looks to go along with it, and he hasn't settled down by his early 30s, then to me that's telling that he probably has used his 20s to run through as many women as possible.
Potentially. Or did he just have, you know, a long-term relationship that he just felt like wasn't right, and in the end he wasn't going to marry her, so then it came to an end after 2-3 years, 4 years.
That's true. That's a possibility as well, for sure.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think there's a certain percentage of those guys, and they're probably, the older they get, are more willing to say, you know, I'm kind of sick of this dating game. I want to just kind of settle down, but I want to settle down with somebody who's going to be in that lower age range.
That's why I think even like men that are divorced into their 30s, like, and they're out in the dating world again, I think that he has more potential there of meeting a woman that is younger, because she's looking at that track record. Like that's part of his value. If she wants a relationship, like most women do. I think that's why I talk about how like single dads oftentimes like actually have a good image in a lot of women's eyes. And I think some of it has to do with this. Like he has that track record of having a long-term relationship and wanting that. Like he obviously, that's his goal. So why not have it again?
Although it could have been, you know, a hookup gone bad or you know, a short-term relationship or whatever.
Yeah.
But I do hear what you're saying. And I think that there's truth to it. It's interesting because I'm wondering with guys who are kind of in that spot, I think they're more likely to definitely want to kind of settle down versus, you know, kind of the younger Chad guy. And so, but again, I think that what's the odds that you're going, like, for example, let's say, you know, either you go to medical school or you just start your own business or whatever, but in order to like get decent money by your early 30s, like one way or another, you're going to have to work for that and build for that. So are you able to continue to go to the gym and, you know, work on that type of thing when potentially you're putting in, you know, 60, 80 hours a week? Do you know what I mean? And just naturally, as we age, our looks are going to decline no matter how much you want to fight them. And so it's something that I'm wondering if in today's day and age, if kind of a normie doctor or whatever was on these apps and he was 33 and okay, he's going to say, yeah, I want, a 22-year-old, 23-year-old. How successful is he going to be in getting even through the door just because the looks piece may not be there as much? It almost seems like it's like you have to have everything and then you're going to be good. But if there's one thing missing, especially on the dating apps, if it's the looks piece, once they get older, women, they're going to be able to check more boxes, but how are they going to get in the door though? Unless it's a warm environment or a work environment or something like that. Right.
I think that's where, I don't know. I think that there's going to be more shift over time. I think that we've seen a big shift in, the last 10 years because of dating apps. But I think that there's going to be even more of a shift, down the road.
Yes. So you're saying it's going to get worse?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it'll get worse before it gets better.
Yes.
Because I think that we are in this, mating dilemma. And at some point, women are going to need to just look at men as, I don't know, more like individuals, more as, their personality. Things like that matter more about who he is internally. And I think that it will happen in time where it'll be that because women are becoming more equalized in the workforce.
Yeah.
And there is more of that push of equal relationships, both coming together and being partners. The guys are taking on more of the caregiver role for kids. I just think that they don't have it figured out yet. And it's not matching some of the energy in dating because the energy with dating right now is still women saying, well, yeah, I'm the strong, independent woman, but I want a man that's doing more than me and that can provide for me and is still a protector. Well, there needs to be a mindset adjustment at some point, and you need to see him as valuable for those other things. But I know that's difficult because I don't know how that really meshes up with the whole idea of masculinity. And I think we'll see it play out really in the next 10, 15 years.
Well, what was do you remember the stat as far as saying that I think it's by the time it's 2030 or 2040 that I think 40% of women will have never been married or had children.
Oh my God.
And so, but this is actually a thing where I read that investors are now starting to invest in things like cat food. I swear to God, because of the fact
there's going to be more cat ladies.
Yes. Because of the fact that this is a trend that's going to be happening. So typically a lot of the things that women are into, that's going to be in demand.
That really makes sense. There you go.
Especially if you don't need a man, which again, a lot of times they don't really, except for, I think there's a difference between needing and wanting. And I think most women want, if they're heterosexual, some kind of partnership at some point in their life. But I think what's going to happen is that once kind of women hit that wall, it's going to be really difficult for them. Because again, all the guys in their age bracket are going to be, according to this chart and just common sense and what I've seen, are going to be trying to date younger. What's interesting during this conversation is that, I kind of came in with this strong stance. And then when I realized it was 2014, I was like, maybe this is something that it is not working anymore. Yeah. I don't know. I'd love to hear from our audience.
I would too, yes.
As far as what their experiences have been and what they think about a chart like this, if they think that there's reality to that or that's something that's maybe outdated.
Absolutely. We'll be interested to hear.